afternoon, Coronado Rotary, and welcome to another action-packed episode of the Coronado Rotary Club. Kicking off today will be Marty Helmers with the Invocation Pledge.
Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, President Bob. In the spirit of unity, we come together, driven by the belief that through service and compassion, we can illuminate the path towards a better world. Let us remember that our actions, no matter how small, can create ripples of positive change that touch the lives of many, and together, we can be the beacons of hope and inspiration for our communities. Please join me in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Marty. All right, past President Dan Orr, visiting Rotarians and guests.
Hello. We didn't have any visiting Rotarians check in, so we'll do guests of Rotarians. Unless there's any visiting Rotarians that didn't check in. Okay, on my left. Yes, guess.
Am I on your left, Dan?
You're on my left. In the inverse universe, you're perfect.
President Bob and Dan, past President Dan, fellow Rotarians, and all your guests. It's my pleasure to introduce some special people today. First of all, my wife Penny Dermeyer, who's been here quite a few times in the past. I'd like to introduce Terry Curtin, who is Doug St. Dennis's daughter. And then my dear friends from the Navy's past, back in the 70s, Ron and Jane Vogel, who live in Little Compton, Rhode Island. Thank you.
My right, your left.
President Bob, fellow Rotarians and guests, here for the third time is my special guest, Eric Nelson. He spoke to us about the magic of carpet recycling 2 years ago. He's had his Rotary one, and he's in the pipeline.
Fred.
Good afternoon, President Bob and fellow Rotarians. It's my pleasure again to welcome my wife, Holly.
John Duncan, fight on.
Fight on. Good afternoon, fellow Rotarians, guests, President Bob. My guest today is Brett Davis. Brett is the first time here at a Rotary meeting, but he's the producer of the film about the sewage crisis called The Big Dump, which is premiering on Friday with the Coronado Island Film Festival. So please welcome Brett. Thank you.
Anyone else? We're forking this, we're done. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and actually there is one other, and I'd like to welcome my guests, Scott and Trish Swift. More on him later. All right, a couple of red badgers. Let's see. Suzanne Frumps. There she is. Ooh, hi Suzanne. And Sarah Kolke. And Evelyn Markel. Did I miss anybody? Jerry Moss. Oh, Jerry Moss, okay. And Amanda, yes, and JT. Why are you guys not on my list? And Brandon, okay. Any other red badgers? All right, well, you can tell I checked the roster about 2 days ago when maybe there weren't all the signatures yet. Anyway, welcome, Red Badgers, and on to the next event. Let's look at announcements here.
There, that's better.
Okay, and thanks to Joe for reminding me that today is actually the 8th and no longer the 1st. Good job, Joe Malloy. All right, beach cleanup coming, two events on Saturday, actually. Beach cleanup, pick one of these or do both. 7:45 at the corner of Isabella and Ocean, and coffee and fellowship to follow after that. Or if you'd like to put flags on the avenue, there's 2 opportunities to do that. Putting them up at 7 a.m. And taking them down at 4 p.m. for Veterans Day. Okay. A reminder that we'll be celebrating Jerry Brown's life at St. Paul's 2 p.m. on Sunday. Quick update on our favorite Doug St. Dennis. She had her triple bypass on Halloween. That's scary, right? Okay. She got home on Saturday and says she's feeling pretty good. And Sarah, her 21-year-old cat, is keeping her company. She's having a great time answering texts and is receiving visitors. But I'm going to turn over to Terry for any additional comments on and the latest, if you don't mind.
Hi, everybody. She's sorry she can't be here. She says she has FOMO and she misses everything. She's already started back in film festival emails, which she shouldn't be doing, but she is. And we're scheduling 1 to 2 visitors a day for a quick 15, 20 minutes because it gets a little tiring. So come through me. My sister Corinne and I are there, and we'll do the scheduling, and she'd love to see everybody. So thank you for all your good thoughts.
Thanks, Terry. We're so glad that the prognosis is just terrific. And one more quick picture of Doug. She's, next slide. There we go. She's out getting some sun, and thanks to Terry and Corinne that she's got such great care at home. So we are going to be watching your progress, Doug, and looking forward to seeing you back on your feet here at Rotary real quick. Okay, next slide. This is the last and final advertisement for the Zone Institute this weekend at the Town and Country. Really, the best opportunity for you is to do this virtually now. The price keeps coming down. They're advertising now $99 to join this virtually if you're inclined, and just use that promo code. And Luann, you are going to this, is that correct? Okay. Yeah. So if you've got any questions about it or interested in doing this, she can fill in some of the details. It's a great opportunity, though. Probably over 100 clubs involved in this, and it's going to be right here. Big West is essentially everything west of the Mississippi. So 30 districts. Yeah. So it's a big gathering and a great opportunity. Okay, next slide. All right, did you guys see all the new apparel in there on the way in? If you did, they're taking orders. See Sue Ryan or Marty Helmers and be properly adorned for the coming season. Cool. All right, next slide. I'm going to turn the mic over to J.M.
Ho, 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 Merry Christmas, and Santa Claus is coming to town on Wednesday, December 13th. My co-chair and I, Ann Stockdale, have got some new things planned for you. I'm very pleased to announce that just today, our Santa Claus, who was not married, I found a beautiful wife for our Santa Claus today. So we will have a Mrs. Claus at the event. We're going to have some new things planned for the kiddos, and it always sells out, so please get your tickets early and join us because it's a lot of fun. Oh, and of course, the very shy and reticent Mary Taylor. It took me a lot to bring her out of her shell, but she's agreed to corral her corral, and as quiet as she is, she will sing. There you go.
Thank you, Jean. And on the topic of the holiday season, we will once again have a Christmas float. And Robin McCarty is heading up that committee. And if you're interested in helping out on that at all, please see Robin. He'd love to have some help with that. And it's going to be another great community program for the Christmas parade. Okay, next slide. All right, still looking for some volunteers for the Give-a-thon on on Thursday the 9th. That's tomorrow, actually. So, Suzanne, how are we doing on that? Yeah.
We have 10 volunteers, which is great. We're going to be manning the phones and taking donations and that kind of stuff.
Okay.
Get all the home for Christmas.
And do you need any more volunteers?
I can take a couple more volunteers.
Okay. She says she can use a couple more volunteers, so if you'd like to participate in this, please see Suzanne.
4 to 7, and they're going to feed us.
4 to 7, and I'm repeating what because you might not be able to hear her, but they're feeding us, so that's an important footnote. Okay, next slide. The IB Food Pantry. So we are collecting food for this, and if you have some of these things, or you are inclined to go out and purchase them and drop them off, there's a whole bunch of different places you can do that. Any of the folks listed up there with their addresses are wide open for food drops. These are the things they're looking for. You know, they're listed. You don't have to memorize it because it's whatever you usually find on your dining room table at Thanksgiving. Those are the things they're looking for. And so if you have those things or are inclined to pick some up and make the donation, please do so and get them to the Rotarians that are listed. And if you happen to be able to bring it to a meeting, you can do that too. So bring them in here and we'll pick them up and get those foodstuffs where they need to be. Thank you. Next slide. Still charging ahead for next week on flu shots, drive-through. I don't think we have the 65 and above brand yet, but Nora promises to give me a green flag when that does happen. But the other type of shot is available, and they're going to be doing that on Tuesday from 10 to 3 drive-through. My last paid advertisement for ISFR, again, if you're a skier and you want to try this out, it is a blast. So we're going to Bend, Oregon this year, Mount Bachelor, and the period is the 3rd of February through the 10th. If you have any questions, talk to either Marty, me, or Steve Dermeyer. Is there a hand wave back there, Marty? She's saying this is where she is, so come talk to her about skiing. Yeah. All right, next slide. Okay, also next week, the 15th, early morning here, but there's a band of Rotarians getting together to feed the needy. They're going to carpool it from the U.S. Bank there, starting at 5:30, and we've got several folks already signed up for that, with a couple of spots still available. So if you'd like to participate in that, please talk to Mary or Bob Griffin, and that would be a great thing to do on that morning.
What time will we be returning to Coronado, please?
Mary Griffin. About 8 o'clock, she says. Is that right? Okay. Oh, you've got everybody you need. You don't need any more volunteers. Okay. Well, that's a good news story actually, because we're all full with the spots that we had open. So, well done, Mary. Thank you. Okay, things that are going on around town. I think I only have one slide on that, and please bring that one up. Look at this. Red Badgers went to the District Foundation seminar last week, and Jerry Moss and Evelyn Markell were along with Luann, and they got the plaque. And so that's quite a tribute to what this club has done for the End Polio Now program. I think we I think we have, they articulated that we've contributed $3 million to that out of this club. That's extraordinary over the years. So, just amazing. So, thanks, Evelyn and Jerry, for taking the time on Saturday to go to that, and Luann as well. Great job. Okay, let's see here. Dan Gensler? There he is.
Thanks, President Bob. It gives me a really great pleasure today to introduce to you our nominees for our board of directors. Your nomination committee met, and here's who we have slated again as nominees for the 2024-25 Rotary year. So we have the returning, continuing board members are going to be Dave Landon, John McCann, Chris Cays, and Dan Frank. Those are continuing for a second year. And our new directors will be Marvin Hines and Virginia Bear. So there's your slate for the directors. On the officer front, Secretary Kit Williams will return for a second year. Carol McClellan will also return for a second year. Our immediate, and Carol is treasurer, Kit is secretary, as I mentioned. Immediate past president, Bob Rutherford. President, Pat Stark. And president-elect, Natalie Bailey.
Well, that's an outstanding slate of dedicated Rotarians. Dan, thank you, and thank the committee for the work you put into to assemble that group of folks. It's going to be fun working with that new group next year. Thank you. Okay, let's see, Amy Stewart.
President Bob, fellow Rotarians. I brought a prop with me. Literally, this jumped onto my car. I'm not kidding you, Dan can attest to this. We're driving along down the Strand, right past Delta Beach, and this bag blowing around and pops up and gets stuck on my outrigger canoe rack on top of my car. And it was just perfect because we have a Delta Beach cleanup tomorrow. This is something that Emerald Keepers, Rotary, and the Navy all partner on, and we'd love to have you all come on out in your Rotary vests and clean up Delta Beach tomorrow. You may know that Delta Beach is the beach just south of the amphibious space along the bay, all the way down to Fiddler's Cove. It starts at 8:30 tomorrow and goes until 11. This beach is particularly dirty because we don't have all kinds of people running around and picking it up because it is always closed. It is the beach, the nesting grounds of the snowy plover and least tern, and so it's a protected area. So it's really great when we get a chance to go out there. And personally, I will be at the North Gate, which is just south of the amphibious space. You can look for a big feather flag that says Emerald Keepers so that you can identify that gate, because it's very difficult to, if you don't know right where you're looking, but you can park right inside there. Fiddler's Cove will probably be fairly filled with military personnel. So anyway, we hope that you'll come out and clean. I am personally going to come to the middle, kind of halfway between Fiddler's Cove and the North Gate, and start there, because last year when we were cleaning, actually it was earlier this year in February, before the nesting season, it was just so bad, and we did not finish. We literally ran out of time. So bring your gloves, bring your pickers, come on out, and then we'll transfer buckets into bags and put them up, and the military personnel will come by and pick up the bags and throw them in the back of the truck. We usually fill an entire skiff. So come on out, it's a great cleanup. So thank you again, tomorrow at 8:30. And the other thing I asked President Bob, if I could just have 1 minute, or 2 minutes actually, to show a quick video. Let me just kind of tell you what this is. So Emerald Keepers has 18 interns, 15 from Coronado High School, and 3 who attend other schools across the bridge but live here in Coronado. And they are all working on a number of passion projects, pretty incredible projects. Some are already underway, some are just getting started. But one of the things that they're doing, they're working on a zero waste projects at the school so that they don't have all of this waste at lunchtime. And it was really interesting last Halloween, right before Halloween, that Friday before, we had a little fishing booth where we were fishing, kids were fishing and pulling out trash, recycle, or organic waste. And it was really amazing to me how many people had no idea what went in each bin because they were supposed to sort it. That was the whole idea. There were cowbells involved, there were. So it was a lot of fun, it was a great game, but I'm hoping that you all learned something about what goes in each bin just by showing this video that the interns made. So if you don't mind playing it, that would be
5 billion
awesome.
tons of garbage are filling our landfills, yet 70% of all trash can be recycled. According to state records, in 2021, Coronado generated 9.5 pounds of waste per person daily, while cities across the bridge 5 billion tons of garbage are filling our landfills, yet 70% of all trash can be recycled. According to state records, in 2021, Coronado generated 9.5 pounds of waste per person daily, while cities across the bridge average 4.4 pounds of waste per day. We think you can do better.
Organic waste makes up over 40% of California's waste stream. As organic waste decomposes, it releases a potent greenhouse gas called methane into the atmosphere. This contributes to climate change. So let's see what goes into your trash, recyclables, and compost.
Soft plastics like these that you can crinkle in your hands belong in the trash.
Hard plastics like these belong in the recycling bin.
The things inside your Amazon box like this belong in the trash, but the box itself can go in the recycling bin.
Although you may think this cup is recyclable, it does have wax on the inside. Therefore, it goes in the trash. However, the paper goes in the recycle.
Better yet, bring your own reusable cup and purchase this sticker at Emerald Green Ocean Blue Coffee Shop to get 5% off of your favorite beverage.
Bottles, cans, and jars must be completely emptied, but they don't have to be rinsed out, and they go in the recycling bin. Order a compost bin from Edco, or you can get your own to put kitchen scraps, eggshells, strawberry tops, and bananas in the compost bin. All aluminum can be recycled as long as it's clean.
While most cardboards go in the recycling, pizza boxes have grease on them, so they have to go in the compost bin.
I used to think my dog's poop was compostable, but actually, it's just trash.
Paper plates with food stains can be composted. Newspapers and junk mail belong in the recycling.
Any plastic film or plastic bags go in the trash. Although there are some places that recycle plastic bags, Coronado does not.
All used paper towels can go in the compost bin.
Most people already know that our backyard waste goes in the compost, but we're just here to reinforce it.
Shredded paper can clog recycling machines, but if you put it in a bag and seal it, you can still recycle it.
Seniors, floaties aren't recyclable or compostable, so make sure to pass them down to junior.
We hope that after today, you know how to use each bin correctly. It's up to you to reduce, reuse, and recycle. You are making an investment in our future. Thank you!
I'll make sure that you get the link. Yeah, so this plastic bag, I don't ever want to see any of these in Coronado ever. Thank you.
Nicely done, Amy. And once again, on behalf of the Coronado Rotary Club, thank you so much for taking the committee to protect the environment in our local club. You're the perfect person for that, and we're really lucky to have Amy, who has a passion for this kind of thing. It's the 7th Avenue of focus, area of focus for Rotary International. We're doing our part. Okay, well, I think we're going to start a little early because our guest speaker is going to have some of the more interesting and unique perspectives that we have a chance to hear in this club, and I don't want to cut any of his remarks short. So I think we'll start a little early, and I'll just tell you that it's a great honor and a privilege for me to have the opportunity to introduce a man that I've known like a brother for 45 years. Admiral Scott Swift started with me as commissioned as an AVROC, the Aviation Officer Reserve candidate program. He's actually an alum here locally from San Diego State, so he's got roots. And he has held command at every level, in fact, starting at the lieutenant commander level, which is very unusual for us. Most of us wait till we have scrambled eggs on our hat before we put the pin on, but his first command started at the 04 level, and he's commanded at every level up to the commander of the Pacific Fleet, and that has included Squadron Command, Air Wing Command, Battle Group Command, 7th Fleet Command, and then finally as commander of the Pacific Fleet, which is most interesting because in that role and in that capacity, he is the implementer and probably on the ragged edge even of developing our foreign policy in the Indo-Pacific Rim, particularly with our, I guess we don't want to call them adversaries, but our competitor in that region, of course, which is China. And we know by picking up a newspaper on any given day that there's a front page story dealing with how we're managing our relations, both economically and militarily, with the People's Republic of China. So I've been trying to get Scott to come talk to us about those particular thoughts and his perspective in that area. And guess what? I'm not the only person that seeks him for those comments. He's since retiring in 2018 has probably been as busier responding to people who are very much interested in what he thinks about these areas. So I want to thank Trish, by the way. This is a 2-for-1 deal. If you can get Scott in here, it's a better deal if Trish comes with him. So it's such a pleasure to have both of you here. And thank you for rearranging your schedule to make that happen, Scott. And we're looking forward to having you here in your winter home for the next few months. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Admiral Scott Swift, and thank you for coming to speak to us today, sir.
So it's great to be here. Thank you for that kind invitation. When I found out Trish was going to be here, I actually wrote that for Bob because I wanted her to hear it. We have been on this journey together here, and started out on the East Coast. It's interesting, and I think this speaks for the power of the Rotary. When we heard guests from Little Compton were here, talk about 6 degrees of separation right now. Their brains are spinning, trying to figure out where I'm going with this. So Trish's family is from Westport, Mass. So drives down Adamsville, and there we are with our home in Westport, our spring, summer, and fall home. And then I grew up here in San Diego, so we're fortunate to have the house that I grew up in. So it's great to be back. It's great to be back amongst so many friends. I didn't realize that Admiral Bennett had a first name, Brent, until I got here today. I don't know, we passed, our paths crossed a couple of times after I retired, but before that, I wanted to make sure my path never crossed his path, because he was up there and had all kinds of power over things that he probably would not appreciate that I was doing when I was a young lieutenant running around flying airplanes. But Tom and Susan Mitchell had a huge impact on me. I was right about the time I was thinking about getting out of the Navy for the first time when I was lieutenant. I worked for both of them. Tom was commanding the training squadron, the A7 training squadron up in Lemoore, and I was an instructor there. And one of the reasons I decided to take one more tour instead of getting out at the 4.5 year point was based on Tom's leadership and what I saw him doing there in the squadron. And any of you that know Tom, it rings true, I'm sure. And then Howard Summers and I, our paths crossed back when I was a director of Navy staff, and he and Gene were looking for some advocacy in D.C. For some issues that were near and dear to their heart. So I made a couple of introductions, and it's fantastic what you and Gene have done with that since, with numerous bills that have been passed in memory of your son. So it's great to be here with people that both Trish and I knew and have grown up with. So let me refer back and make sure I have it. Apologies to the events committee. Bob was very gracious. I had pushed them all over the place with my crazy schedule and had said there's absolutely no way I can make today happen. And I don't know if Marty and I were going through the line. I don't know if he's part of the committee, but I was commenting to him about how challenging it is supporting an organization like this because the kind of people that you want to have come talk are really busy doing a lot of different things. And I find myself not someone that's being pursued for events like this, but someone who does find himself busy. And then just the connection with Coronado here. We're driving across the bridge this morning, and my wife reminded me that it was 15 years ago, plus or minus 2 days to the day, that I took over Carrier Strike Group 9 aboard Abraham Lincoln at the Carrier Pier there in North Island. So it's interesting, all the 6 degrees of separation. Bob did ask me to come talk about something that I spend a lot of my time on. I'm involved in a lot of different things, not just the challenges that we have with PRC, but I spend a lot of time in I would call it the national security domain, talking about a lot of issues just based on my experience. I was very blessed in my career. When I first came to know Bob, as he mentioned, when we were going through aviation officer candidate school together. And we essentially grew up together, as he said, as brothers. I mean, we both flew A-7s, we flew F-18s, all out of Lemoore. So operationally, we were together as a family, both his family and Trish tied at the hip throughout that time period. All my aviation career has been in the Pacific. I did 3 tours in the Pentagon. Thankfully, they were all short. I don't know if I did a terrible job there. Whatever the magic was, it stuck with me for three tours there. So the joint tour, I had to stay for 2 years to get joint credit, but once the clock hit 2 years, I got yanked out and got sent back to an operational job. So I've been an operational sailor throughout my just over 40 years of career, from the day I enlisted until the day I retired. And that, I'm not an expert on anything. I don't know if you play games as part of the speaker thing, but if you like to play a game called Stump the Dummy, it's going to be really interesting for you, because it's really easy to do for somebody like me. I'm not an expert on anything, but I've got a lot of experience. And so I make my money as a consultant, giving a practitioner's perspective to challenges that people are having with industry across the board. And I spend a lot of my time, pro bono time, working with government agencies and non-government agencies on the challenges that we are facing, I think, as a nation, and I think all liberal democracies are facing across the world from a foreign policy and international perspective beyond our borders. The first thing I want to say, and I'll be brief because I want to get to the Q&A, and if the Q&A dies out, I can keep talking for another 2 days, because we are in the process of moving back into our house at Point Loma. The longer I talk, the longer it's going to be before I get back to lining up boxes for Trish to unpack. But I do want to, what's something that I've discovered that's unique about me, of being somebody in uniform, is I am critical of where many countries are, the U.S. being among them, of turning to the military as the primary source of resolving and bringing stability to that domain that's outside their borders. So I talk about, from a military perspective, we are experts at security, but security for security's sake has little value. But when you apply security from a national security perspective, that application, the design is either to maintain stability that is currently in place in the international domain, or regain stability. So security for stability's sake has great value. Now, why it's important to this audience, because the value of that stability is, from that stability comes prosperity. I mean, that's where people will make investments. That's where people are comfortable assessing the financial risk of what they're doing with their investments, whatever it might be. So we're the military, I understand, is rightfully so the backdrop of all that. I do think the military needs to better understand that role that they play, and it's secondary outside of our borders from the State Department. State Department should have to lead there, and the DoD should be providing support. Unless diplomacy has completely failed, and the decision is that we're going to pull the military toolbox out and use it to regain stability. And to be clear, the military doesn't build anything. We do it during peacetime. It's an amazing job the Seabees do, and Red One on the Air Force side. The Army has their own organizations that do that work. But if it comes to enforcing our own vital interest overseas, and it comes to kinetics or non-kinetic fires, we blow things up until people finally agree that it's time to come together and start diplomacy once again. It's true of World War I, it's true of World War II, it's all the way through all the wars that we've been associated with and have been in. So my concern is about this competition, I think is the right term to use in characterizing our relationship with China right now. In fact, the relationship with virtually every other liberal democracy around the world is the same. It's a relationship of competition. That is not a bad thing. Competition makes us all better. You know, I see this banner right here. I would imagine that reflects a little bit of competition within the Rotaries itself. And where you fell out on that is pretty impressive. But there's rules that are associated with that. Now, you could have taken all that money that you collected through donations and applied it to whoever the individual was that decided to award that award. You know, that may not be the most appropriate way to pursue a competition. And that's where the challenges that we have with the PRC in particular is because I think that they've come to the conclusion that their economic system cannot survive full contact with the international economic system. I'm a supporter, was a supporter, and continue to be a supporter of the TPP, Trans-Pacific Partnership, trying to blank on the last word there, which became a political football that went back and forth about why would we have this trade pact in the Pacific. My one criticism of that trade pact was that we didn't invite China in. And people said if we invite China in, then it won't have value. China never could have participated in it. The reason that I supported at the time, I was still in uniform, so I would share my opinion when people would ask me, is that the rules that were associated with it are the rules that are critical to sustaining stability within the international economic system that drives the benefit, that prosperity that we've all enjoyed since the end of World War II. And that is transparency in banking, it's transparency in labor laws, it's transparency in workforce, all those things that you take from a business perspective that ensures the vitality of industry. That is not part of how PRC thinks about those things. It's a centralized power system, centralized in the Chinese Communist Party. And you'll hear me refer most often to the China problem as a PRC problem, because the instrument of authority from the Chinese Communist Party is the People's Republic of China, their government. I hesitate to say Chinese. I was mentioning to Bob at the table here that I'm involved in 4 different dialogues with different organizations within the Chinese government. That's all virtual dialogues. There is one that's happening in person now that we're starting to clear away from COVID. But those dialogues are very much the exception from what the PRC approaches. It's about total control and owning the rules. So when we talk about a competition, what we really want to talk about are what are the rules that govern that competition. And that's where the stressors are coming into this relationship. Now, some of it, I don't know if you're familiar with freedom of navigation operations, but that's an ongoing series of operations that the U.S. Navy, 7th Fleet in particular, under their authorities, up through PAC Fleet, through Indo-PACOM, and eventually the DoD. But we've lost what the inference is behind those, the message that we're trying to send. So we do around 25 or 30 of freedom of navigation operations with respect to excessive claims that China has. We do over 200 of those around the world, countering excessive claims, claims that exceed the international rules-based order, which is referred to from a maritime perspective as UNCLOS. So it's not unique. This is about the standards and the rules are important, just like the rules are important for how you compete for an award like that on that banner. The last thing I'll say about that competition and the rules is that we talk often, those of us in the Navy talk about freedom of navigation in a singular sense. That's not what's being challenged from just the maritime perspective. So our freedom to navigate, when I say our, I mean liberal democracies around the world, freedom to navigate in an acronym, DIME-FIL, diplomatic, information, yes, military, economic, financial, legal, and intelligence, all our freedoms to navigate in those domains is being challenged as well across the board. We just took a slice out of the maritime piece, and that's what FONOPS is used to challenge. I'm going to talk more about FONOPS in the Q&A section. But think about the rules that govern our lives. It's great being in Westport. There is not, unless you're on 88, there's not a single red light in Westport. I love it. There are no rules when it comes to the corner. This whole idea about what is it about, in California, if you both end up getting to the intersection at the same time, whoever's on the right has the right of way. Unless the first one that gets to the intersection, they have the right of way. There is no such rule like that in Massachusetts. There may be, but no one follows it. What you do is you flick your lights at the guy that's coming the other way. Am I right? If it flicks the lights, I haven't figured out what that means. I thought what it meant was you're okay to go, but about 50% of the time it means, no, I'm going. So that's what it's like between China and the other countries in the world, is you're not quite sure what the rules are. Download the visa application to go to China. The last time I went to China was before COVID. But address, kids' names, kids' addresses. I mean, the amount of data that they're sucking out, to track you, it is just amazing. So those things that we take for granted, we've got these rules that govern how we travel around on our roads. We've got these rules about having an ID certification to drive. Those rules don't apply from a PRC perspective. That's what the challenge is. Bob, in the interest of time, let me transition to Q&A, and I can go in much greater depth and detail of what's on your minds, rather than going into a great amount of detail and depth on what's my mind and not have it interesting to you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Nutt, and my question is, China's interest in Taiwan appears to be out of any set of rules that you're talking about, and how would that impact our relationship with them? And what is your opinion on the likelihood of China making an overt grab for Taiwan?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So a couple of points on that. I do believe in the One China policy. I think the U.S. policy is correct in recognizing the One China policy. So the U.S. policy is that we believe in One China, that PRC at one point, that Taiwan at one point was a part of PRC, but it's an independent country now, and as it's an independent country, they have a right to decide their future. So they can't, what that policy said is, we won't tolerate the use of force or coercion to reunify, for PRC to reunify Taiwan with PRC. So that's the crux of the challenge. Same way with FONOPS. When we do a freedom of navigation operation, China has made a decision based on history that they own these islands or a piece of this island. That's not the way it works in the international rules-based order. It's got to be law-based. In fact, they lost a case in the international court as to some of these claims that they've had in the South China Sea. Now, what's the likelihood? Has anybody heard of the Davison year, 2027? So Admiral Davison was the Indo-PACOM commander, and he was testifying in front of Congress, and was asked in open testimony about what he thought the date was that China may forcibly reunify Taiwan with China. And he said 2027. So Phil's a good friend of mine, and we've had conversations about that, and he's a little frustrated. His point is he felt that's when the Chinese Communist Party would have enough confidence in the People's Liberation Army to forcibly reunify Taiwan. I don't believe in that date. I think that's a date that the PLA has been given guidance that they have to have the power or the capability to forcibly reunify. I don't think they can get there by 2027, but that's a whole other discussion. The reason that I don't believe in that date is because it could happen earlier. And it all has to do with the stability of the Chinese Communist Party. So when you look at what's going on inside China right now, they can't generate enough hydroelectric power to power the factories in Shanghai. They can't generate workers to man the factories in Shanghai if they could run them for 24 hours, if they had the power to do that. COVID policy, and we saw open revolt on the TV, which was very unusual that the Chinese government, that happened so spontaneously that they weren't able to lock it down before it got out in the international press. Open revolt over the COVID rules of isolation had a huge impact on their economy. They're not able to meet their goals, as modest as they may be, for growth. These are promises that the Chinese Communist Party had made to the Chinese people. So if the Chinese people start to have doubts about the Chinese Communist Party ability to deliver on what it said it would deliver, then my fear is that a potential approach is the PRC externalizes that problem, suggests that Taiwan, because all the Chinese people believe that Taiwan is a part of China, that based on the U.S. and other liberal democracies, that Taiwan it hasn't declared independence yet, to be clear. But if they did declare independence, I would worry that would give cause for the Chinese Communist Party to externalize all these incredible internal problems. Demographics in China is against the government. It's an aging population. The one-child policy there, it's been reversed. It'll take 35 years before you can even see a tick go the other way based on babies that were born 5 years ago when that policy was reversed, before they become full contributing members to the economy. Around 35 years is when you cross that threshold of when they're adding more benefit than what they're taking away. Healthcare system is terrible. You've got this aging population. I mean, it is a mess. So I worry about externalizing an internal problem in Taiwan is an easy target. The other thing I would say is that we get too fascinated on one thing. I don't spend much time worrying about Taiwan. So how many people in here know where Second Thomas Shoal is? So that could be the next trigger point. That could be the next trigger point when you see what's happening there with the Philippines. The Philippines have come out and re-supported EDCA, which is a basing agreement, base sharing agreement that we have with the Filipinos. When Duterte took over, all that was shut down. Now that Duterte is out, the new president has supported the reinstatement of EDCA, so we have access to use 5 bases in the Philippines as we need to come and go. They won't be permanent bases, but the logistics, fuel, to support our operations that we execute in the South China Sea and beyond that as well. Second Thomas Shoal is a Philippine-claimed atoll that had an LST, an old World War II LST that we had gifted to the Philippines. They ran that ashore on that atoll, 15 years ago, longer than that, 20 years ago, to lay claim to, and they have a group of Philippine Marines that have been living on that thing for 2 weeks at a time. And China has started to interdict the resupply there. And the resupply has become more contentious. It happens every 2 weeks because of EDCA. And the PRC is very concerned about that becoming a U.S. base. Now, there's one of the reclaimed islands is only about 62 miles away from Second Thomas Shoal. My point in all that detail of the background is this predictive analysis of when will it be Taiwan, when will it be Second Thomas Shoal. How many of you in here own a house? Show of hands. Okay. Put your hand down. Leave them up. Put your hand down. Put your hand down if you don't have insurance on that home. Okay, put your hand down if you don't think your house is going to burn down by tonight. So if you don't think your house is going to burn down, your hand should be down. So if Tom, you think your house is going to burn down tonight? It's pretty hot. So I'm thinking, Tom, you probably have fire insurance. You have fire insurance on that house. So I've been paying fire insurance on that damn house over in Point Loma for 35 years. I can't wait for that sucker to burn down so I can get a return on my investment. So we've got that fire insurance because that house means a lot to us. I grew up in it. We got a lot of stuff that's in it, and I want to guarantee that home. We're the fire insurance for what's happening with PRC. So it doesn't matter whether it's 2027. It doesn't matter if it's 10 years from now. It doesn't matter if it's 2 years from now. We need to be ready as a nation and have a whole of government approach. There's some other examples of where we have not been focused with a whole whole of government approach, and that's Ukraine. We see what's going on in Gaza now. The world is a very unstable place. Remember the discussion I had about stability? What the military does is we provide security to either sustain stability or regain stability. And from that stability comes prosperity. There's not a lot of prosperity in the Middle East if you don't have oil. Now, if you got oil, then that's what's bringing you prosperity. It's not the stability piece. So we need to be focused as a nation more about the instabilities that are occurring around the world and how do we get after those instabilities from a whole of government perspective, a whole of nation perspective, because it's our prosperity. It's what's going into your pockets and out of your pockets day in and day out. So long answer to that question, but it's critically important. It's not one issue that we should be focused on. We need, as a nation, we need to be focused on all the issues that we see, like Gaza, Ukraine, Taiwan, coming to my mind right now. But what are those other trigger points? Second Thomas Shoal. Sounds like you might have some experience with Second Thomas Shoal, or at least awareness of it. That could very well be the trigger, and I don't hear a lot of people talking about that in my trips back to D.C., so that's what I spend my time doing. I'll try to do shorter answers and give me the hook when we run out of time. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know that you do a lot with the U.S. government based on your experience, your background, and all of that. How about academia, specifically here at UC with the School of Global Policy and Strategy, the 21st Century Project, and Dr. Susan Shirk? What is your involvement with it?
Yeah. So Tai Ming as well, I don't know if you're familiar with the group there, but and they're doing some great things with innovation up there as well. Scott Tate was an executive assistant that worked for me, and he's very involved in the community, both with the UCSD community that you mentioned, as well as other industry here in San Diego, and as well as San Diego State. So in full honesty, Bob's wonderful. He didn't give you the full introduction. Here's the full introduction. My wife is going to kick me as soon as because she knows what I'm going to say. So I did go to San Diego State University. I'm still not quite sure where the campus is. I spent most of my time on the beach, and I've been going to college for about a year, and my father put his arm around me and he said, "Son, college is not a career." And I was crushed because I thought I'd found my calling. I was going to be a student for the rest of my life. But I wanted to fly. I wanted to be an airline pilot. And so I scraped together all my credits, and I went into the registrar's office and dropped them on the desk, and I said, okay, and I wanted to be done in 4 years. I already spent a year working hard. So the registrar said, well, there's good news and bad news here. And I said, well, give me the good news first. And she said, you can pursue any degree that you want that we offer here at San Diego State. And I said, that's fantastic. Which one would you recommend after this year of hard work? And he said, well, that's the bad news. You can pursue any degree you want because you haven't done a damn thing the whole time you've been here. So spin the clock forward, and I retire after 40 years, and MIT calls me up and wants me to go to MIT for that, to support a fellowship there, to support the international, CSIS, that's actually a different one. So it's a foreign policy group, much like they have up at UCSD, international studies group. So I spent a year there, and that really opened, I don't know if any of you know Bob Fallon, so Bob called me up. Bob is the only other military fellow that had done that. So they take somebody out that's coming out of the U.S. government, out of industry, foreign or local, MIT does, and they spend a year there in a fellowship interacting with the students. Some of them write books, some of them lecture. And he recommended to me that I do that. And he said there's 3 reasons. One is they provide a stipend that'll make up the difference between what your active duty pay and retirement pay was. The other is it's a great community up there. He didn't know, but we were going to move up to Westport, so it was a train commute to get up to Boston when I went up there. But the last one is it's going to open a world to you that you've never been exposed to on the academic side. Now, I knew about foreign policy because that's where I'd spent most of my time. So I spent a lot of time with academia, both up at Stanford, you mentioned UCSD, spoken at San Diego State a couple of times, MIT, Tufts, Fletcher, BU, BC, most of them up in the Boston area, most of them in California here, just because that's where we're located. So those are the voices that I'm most interested in, because those are the ones that take the alternative views. You know, they don't, this idea that I've got all the answers. I discovered early on as a lieutenant that I didn't have all the answers. I thought I knew the answers. If I could just be more senior, then I could drive all my solutions into the problem. Then I got to be a lieutenant commander and realized the world was a little more complicated. Academia is something that we need to tap into much more broadly to be a fully informed, I think, functioning government. And it's different than this flip-flop that goes back and forth between think tanks. Think tanks are awesome, but too often times you've got one set of think tanks that is supporting one party and another set of think tanks that's supporting another party. And when that party comes into power, all those folks come out of those think tanks, and it's the same kind of homogenized thinking. And a lot of my interactions with my Chinese counterparts is done through academic institutions. Much easier to have a conversation with someone who is a competitor, as Bob pointed out, with as much at stake as the PRC has and the U.S. has in an academic setting than it does in a military setting. They all know who I am, and they all view me the same way. As a retired 4-star. But it's different in an academic setting. That's a great question. Who else has a question? Yes, sir.
So your comments have focused principally upon the United States and China being antagonistic. And I'm wondering if you have any insight into how we might get around that to reach out to China to be a competitor in the same fashion that the French are, and the Germans are, and the English are.
Yeah. So I think it goes back to the question about academia. We need to think about the problem differently. Would be my first response. So the second response is the number of cabinet members that we have in the U.S. government. I got to write them down and read it off a card because there's so many of them. But I look at Secretary Raimondo and her trip. So there's been a number of cabinet officials that have gone to China recently on official calls and having official conversations. So if you Google her response when she came back, I think it's textbook for how we need to get at that problem set. So we agree that the rules are different, but what we all want is prosperity. PRC wants the same thing as the U.S. wants. So where's that maneuver space between that rules-based system where we can reach commonality? Now, some of it is we can focus, they got environmental challenges I just talked about where they were with the ability to generate hydroelectric power. They built all these dams, and it's been an economic tragedy what's occurred. They can't generate enough water from those rivers that we dam now because of what they dammed up the same river, multiple dams to generate this electrical power. It's really created a lot of instability in Vietnam, which is a major partner of China. Their view was we don't care about Vietnam, and all of a sudden, well, I guess we do care about Vietnam from an economic perspective. So if you look down through all the members of the Treasury departments, there's multiple departments that we could collaborate on. Health and Human Services, it's a huge issue here, it's a huge issue in China. So what I describe is a Venn diagram where you've got two circles that oppose us. There's only a little sliver that we see as being compatible right now between us and PRC. I suggest that Venn diagram, there's a lot more overlap than what we recognize. I mentioned the environment. I mentioned the issues with demographics, Health and Human Services that looks after that. You look at Treasury. Treasury is a bit of a challenge because we've got the SWIFT system that we use to transfer money internationally. China's not happy with that. They're trying to produce a Bitcoin of their own. They don't like the fact that the international norm for monetary transaction is the dollar. It gives us a huge amount of power as a nation. We should be careful about people suggesting that we use some other unit of value. So we actually have more in common than we do that drives us apart, but we just need to think about that problem differently. Transportation, the largest commercial shipping company in the world is Costco, which is a Chinese-held company. Business management. I mean, I have some good friends that have kids going to school in China, but when you compare the number of foreign students in China compared to the number of Chinese students in the United States, it's stunning. They're coming here to get educated. So there's a lot of strengths that we have that I don't think we're measuring. I get that hook here from Bob. And I'll come back and close on this point as a military piece, because we're comfortable using the military for that fire insurance. Hey, we're good. If we go to war with PRC over someplace like Taiwan, it's going to be a huge challenge for us. We haven't seen a conflict like that since World War II. So let me finish on this point. So I'll use an example that let's say the tables were reversed, and the United States, San Clemente Island, decides they want to secede from the United States. And they do it. They form their own government, they got their own economy, and the United States, we're not going to stand for this, and we are going to reserve the right to forcibly reunify San Clemente Island with the United States if they don't come to their senses. China speaks up and says, whoa, 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 wait a minute, they made that decision all on their own. We believe in a one America policy, but we don't believe in the use of force and coercion to force San Clemente to come back and be a part of the United States. If they chose to vote on their own, that's great. If you try to forcibly reunify, we're going to steam our army across the Pacific and prevent you from forcibly reunifying San Clemente. Good luck with that. I mean, can you imagine? Flip that coin, and somehow we think we're going to steam all the way across the Pacific and prevent China from forcibly reunifying Taiwan. It is a huge military problem. Everything in the military, we say it all the time, we just don't do it, depends on logistics. All of our supply lines are going to be external. They are all very vulnerable. And that, I mean, we saw it in a very benign environment in Iraqi freedom. All of the PRC supply lines are all internal. I mean, it's across the 26 miles. It's all you have to deal with. So I don't want to diminish the importance of the challenge when I say I'm not worried about a 2027 timeline. I'm not thinking that it's just Taiwan. I think it's worse than that. It could be tomorrow. It's up to the PRC and what happens internal to China. And the trigger could be someplace else. Thanks very much for your time. I hope I've wetted your whistle a little bit as you do your own research on what this competition is like between the United States. It's really about the rules that are associated with governing the competition that occurs on the international stage, and it's almost all economic at its core. You can trace it back to economic issues about how we drive the strength of our economy, the difference of opinion about how you do it in a centralized sense with state-owned enterprise, and how you do it in a liberal democracy sense where these are individual business owners that are making these decisions on their own. Thanks very much. Thanks,
Scott, thank you again to both you and Chris for making the time to come out here today. It really meant a lot to our club to hear those perspectives, and of course yours are come from a very unique and rarefied level in your past and your continued service to this country for that matter. So it's a real treat for us, and thank you so much, and we'll see you around the block. Okay, next week we are, let's see, where are we? Do we know? Someone will tell me if I get it wrong. This never happens when you're really on stage. But anyway, next week we will be at Coronado Yacht Club, and we will hear from the Deputy DA of San Diego on the topic of from the Elder Justice Task Force, Scott Perello. So that should be a good program. And in the meantime, go forth and have a great Rotary week. Service above self.